This is a question that we all um, like dread being asked, right? So, have we ever set a goal that seemed perfect but ended up doing nothing and gathering dust? I think we see this happening quite a lot in our personal lives as well. So, Gayatri, any instance that comes to mind?
Hey, but this is classic, I'm sure. We are almost in the end of the year. Everybody, I'm sure, has taken a gym membership and not actually completed the membership at all. So, yeah,
Exactly.
what like I can think of quickly. And yeah, so many more. We all want to do 100 things within the short span of time that we have. But yeah.
That's right. So we've all been there, done that, and we've all seen that hey, these there are a lot of things that we commit to and we don't actually do this. And this is something that happens in organizations as well. And actually, we have one of our panel members, Katie here, who's been an HR leader for a long time. So I think she would be able to tell us a bit more on what is actually happening on the ground.
Yeah, so Katie, we work closely with her. She is an HR leader from Tropicana Brands. So we have her here with us today. So, Katie, if you could share your experience of the challenges that you have particularly faced in terms of building teams, in terms of handling performances, that would get us started.
Look, it's a real pleasure to be here. Thank you very much, Team Thrive Sparrow, for the invite to join you today. And thank you for the kind introduction. Maybe some background on me. So, yes, I've been doing HR for a long time. I have about 25 years experience in HR. I've spent a lot of that time in FMCG, so 11 years with PepsiCo. More recently, I've spent about another 5 years with other companies, and currently I'm sitting with Tropicana Brands Group that sells juices and juice beverages across the globe. So my role is to lead the HR team for Tropicana Brands Group in Europe. That's about 450 people. And so as a consequence, the question you're asking, guys, is a really relevant one and a really pertinent one, which is how do you ensure that the business plans or the strategy you have as an organization is translated into goals, which ultimately then ensures the right outcome and results of what you're trying to achieve. And I think we've probably all had lots of experience with performance management processes and a lot of the debate around performance management. Does it work? What's the impact? Does it engage and motivate people? Does it just upset people because they're not happy with their ratings at the end of the year? So I've kind of been through lots of organizations and experimented and explored different processes. I think what I've found to be really important in that whole translation of a plan to execution, so to making it happen, and the goal sits in the middle, is ensuring firstly that the goal is regularly updated. So I think probably the idea that you set a goal in January and you review the goal in December to see how you've completed is very out of date. It doesn't fit the way that businesses work now or the way that the world of work goes. So I think creating that constant, frequent dialogue becomes really, really important. It's also important, I think, in the construction of the goal to make sure that we talk about SMART goals a lot, but the most important piece, I think, is that we can articulate to people what the expected impact and outcome is. So you talked earlier about different generations. I think the younger generation coming through is very, empowerment is very important, autonomy is very important, the desire to learn and to be creative is very important. But subsequently, therefore, we need to be less prescriptive on how the goal is done and more prescriptive on the output we expect to see. And I think that enables us to keep the discussion really live and pertinent. The key element as well in those ongoing discussions and dialogue is really around feedback and ensuring that you have that regular loop of feedback. And it's something that, in my experience, managers and organizations generally struggle with. We're not brilliant at giving feedback, and we struggle with finding a way to do it in a way that's constructive, that's helpful, that supports people, as opposed to maybe making them feel a bit lost or a bit attacked. So I think there is a real need for organizations to develop the skills of feedback, to ensure that the performance is meeting expectations and to help grow and stretch people in their capabilities.
Katie, like you rightly said, as organizations, we all struggle to give constructive feedback. Like, how do we ensure this keeps happening? We all are busy, leaders are busy, managers are busy. How do we get this going? It is a task, right? So, any other challenge that you are faced with the new generation of workforce coming? How different are they from the teams that you've faced so long?
Like, yeah, look, I think obviously we've been through this really, transformational period with COVID and with working from home and the pandemic. So I think through that, there were some fundamental shifts in what people expect from work and how they expect their work to happen. So if I think about Western Europe, I'm responsible for my team sit mainly in the UK, France, Belgium, Ireland. They're markets where I would say flexible working has existed for quite some time, but there's now it's certainly a stronger expectation than it was pre-COVID. So the impact that has is that people have a lot of responsibilities outside of life that they're important and that they want to be able to maintain. And as a consequence, they're less flexible maybe in some of the requirements around work that maybe in the past were just expected. So 5 days a week in the office. I mean, if you try to recruit somebody in those markets now for 5 days a week in the office, it's very, very challenging to do so. People are not open to that. Travel and relocation becomes an issue, both from an affordability perspective, but also because people don't see the reason why they would need to move to do their job, because jobs can be done virtually. So I think there's a benefit for people. And I think, for many people, they see it as a personal benefit to have that flexibility. There is a downside, which is the ability then to bring a team together and to collaborate beyond the immediate task. And I think in things like, delivering a business plan or a strategy, what happens, I did a lot of work in my time at PepsiCo to look at how communication occurs across an organization. And when people work virtually, it's very much task focused. So it becomes very specific on a particular activity that needs to be done. What you often get in organizations that's super helpful, though, is the stuff that isn't related to the task, but it's building relationships, it's getting to know what other functions are doing. And this is the bit that doesn't happen so easily. So I think you talked about secret sauce, the secret sauce of culture, which is bringing people together and speaking outside of formal meetings. It's harder to get that when you're working remotely and virtually. So it becomes more challenging sometimes to really feel part of something.
Very true. Like when we are working virtually, how do you make them connect cross-functional teams? How do you help them understand why you need to go and speak to another side of the team member? They're like, no, I'm home, I'm good. Why do I need that? To help them understand, no, it is crucial for the organization, and why it is crucial for the organization to have these communications to get work done more effectively is quite a challenge to the new age leaders to be able to address that, to say, no, can you please go and have these relationships built, get things done faster. Very true. Like, thank you so much for your insights on how and the challenge that you're faced. We all can resonate with that. So yeah, that is what we are also trying to solve. I think all of us are trying to identify, how do we solve this? How do we make these teams speak amongst each other? How do we help them understand how they're contributing to the organization's overall, let's say, growth? So that is what we are going to be discussing today as well. So Katie, anything else that you would like to add before I let Arohan take over again?
No, I mean, the only thing I'd say is that sometimes I think processes and tools can drive a culture shift. So if you want to create a very transparent culture where people share feedback, you need tools. And by implementing the tools, it won't be perfect at the beginning, but over time, you will start to develop that transparency and that collaboration that you're looking for. So I think it's more about starting the journey. It won't be perfect when you start, but it's getting started. And then you will course correct as you go, and you'll figure out what works for you and your organization as you go.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us today and telling us your part about how you feel. So yeah, I will let Arohan take over from here, and we will see how we can figure out ways to tackle the new generation of problems that we currently face. So yeah, over to you, Arohan, and lovely speaking to you always, Katie. It's been wonderful working with you so far as well.
Thank you, Katie, for that wonderful insight. So this is something that we've also been discussing with quite a few HR leaders, and it really resonates. It's kind of like validation for us as well. So firstly, right, so when we were brainstorming, how can we actually talk about, how goals are going wrong? What is the best example that comes to mind? How do we make this relatable, right? So we came up with this idea of this episode in Friends, right, where Rachel is hell-bent on creating this pie. And she starts by mixing up the recipe of English tripe and shepherd's pie. As you may know, one is a dessert and one is a savory dish. And she starts putting all these hodgepodge ingredients together: lady's finger, raspberries, sauteed beef with onions and peas, all of which are amazing ingredients on its own. Like, you can have that as a meal. But when you combine these ingredients, you kind of get this hodgepodge, right? And when she actually gives this to Ross, another character from Friends, he eats it and he says that it tastes like feet, right? So this is very hilarious when we look at it from a sitcom perspective. But I think a lot of organizations, in a way, are actually struggling with this, right? Because when you don't have goals that are clearly defined in the organization, right? And when people don't know how it is they are contributing to the mission of the company, everyone is doing something, right? And that something actually amounts to it. Like, they are putting their hard work and doing something, and they're expecting that this is going to help the company, right? But eventually, if you see, it's like pulling the horse. I mean, it's like pulling the cart from four different directions, right? You're going to break the cart. You're not getting anywhere. So that is the primary problem that majority of the organizations face, right? So we are not alone, right? So this is something that is there. We have so many studies out there, so many surveys out there that are actually showing us these warning signs. So the first one, right, is only 47% of employees are clear on what is expected of their role. Now that is a very concerning number, right? So this is actually from a Gallup survey which takes into account of employees from all the generations, right? And 53% of people don't know what is expected from their role. So I think, imagine this from a newbie's perspective who's joining the company for the first time, right? How will they know what is expected of their role? There needs to be somebody to tell them, or there needs to be a guidebook in place, or there needs to be a process, right? So that's the first problem. The second is, three or four companies have said that their performance management reviews were ineffective. Now, what do I mean by ineffective? I'm not saying that it's not working out at all, right? It's that, see, with the change, right, that has happened. So as Katie was mentioning, like, the pandemic happened, right? And when you're giving feedback, you obviously want to give feedback in a way that it doesn't actually insult them or make them feel bad. The idea of feedback is to improve things, right? So companies are struggling with this already, and this is actually a sign for us that we have to make these changes, right? And another point is, Gen Z is going to be a major point for all of us, right? I mean, we are in 2024, on the cusp of 2025. We're going to see 4 years of Gen Z actually enter the workforce, right? One by one. So that is a big number, right? And 77% of Gen Z want their company mission and their individual goals to actually align. So they're bothered about purpose, right? They want to ensure that they are contributing to the right thing, right? So now I've been saying Gen Z, that, this, right?